Welcome to Beyond the Bar, the podcast where coffee and conversation are a catalyst for growth. If you've been searching for that coffee with a friend experience that leaves you feeling seen, met, and encouraged, you've come to the right place. So grab your cup, listen up, and together we're going beyond the bar.
Okay. Hi guys, welcome to Beyond the Bar. I'm your host, Abby. Today's episode is the second in our two-part mini-series. We're calling it Legacy Builders, Navigating Fatherhood, Ministry, and Entrepreneurship. So our last episode, we sat down with Matthew Johnson. This episode, I get to sit down with the builder of kind of my own family's legacy, my grandpa, Richard Melton. So I'm excited to have him on, and I'll intro him here. But he's done fatherhood, entrepreneurship, and ministry. He's worked as an antique dealer, and that's actually the property where Redemption is on. So if you've been to the shipping container, that's my grandparents' property. So my whole story and being able to do Redemption has all kind of started because of him being willing to let me be there. So I'm excited to sit down with him and dive into all of the things. So here he is, Richard Melton.
Hello.
Thanks for being here.
You're welcome.
I appreciate it. This is a little out of your wheelhouse a little bit with all the cameras and the audio stuff. So how you feeling?
I feel great.
Okay, good. Well, we're going to dive right into the episode. I obviously have known you my whole life. You've known me my whole life. But could you, for our listeners, just give a little background onto your story? Who you are, what you do, how you got here?
All right. I got here because my granddaughter invited me. I don't know where to start. I was born in Montana. Came to this area when I was like 2 years old. I don't know what else you want to know.
Okay, born in Montana, came here when you were 2 years old, and then what was growing up like?
I was a wild teenager.
Okay.
Rebellious. Had a godly mother. Prayed for me constantly. It's a whole new story. I got so wild and so lost. My mother and my grandmother went to a church they don't even normally go to and asked for prayer for God to save me because they knew I was headed in a really bad direction. Yeah.
What did some of that...
How did it happen?
No, just what did some of that stage of life look like? You said you were really rebellious, so what do you mean by that?
Well, I was very wild. I did everything that I shouldn't have been doing. Alcohol, smoked, was a bad child. I was didn't respect authority, especially my parents. I guess when I look back, I was just really looking for my father's attention. He was a workaholic. He was a great dad. He later became saved later in my life. And my mother, though, never gave up on me. Praise God. So I had an amazing conversion when I graduated from high school. I went to the cities to work for a little while. They didn't like that. If they moved a sign, I didn't even know how to get to work. So, it wasn't for me. So I came back, went to vocational school to become a welder. The story how I met the Lord is quite dramatic. I had a friend that was wild as me or wilder, and it was a big deal when you're in vocational school to go up to Lake Superior in the spring smelting. So, of course, headed up there, we went, and it was a pretty bad storm that night. There's a long pier that goes out to a lighthouse in Lake Superior. It's probably a quarter of a mile out there. The stones in the ramp are probably 20, 25 feet high. My buddy got this wild idea to go out to the lighthouse. So we started out there. Thank God I didn't have waders on, but I had all my heavy clothes on. The waves were washing over 20. They were probably another, I don't know, they were huge waves. We get just about the lighthouse, and the waves had washed all the pier away except for maybe 10 feet where the lighthouse was. So now you're looking at a 20-foot drop onto stones, back up onto the pier. I turned around to go back to the shore. My buddy said, oh, no. He knew water real well. I didn't. He said, these waves are going to come in two at a time. then they're going to break for a few seconds. And when they break, you go down on them rocks, get up on that by the lighthouse. Well, he went, and the next thing I knew, I was looking at water several feet over my head. If the waves would have rode me either direction over the pier out into the lake or washed me back into the lake, I certainly wouldn't have. I would have drowned it for sure. As it is, I rode the top of the wave and came down alongside the pier, which I could see water several feet, maybe 10 feet above me. I couldn't get out. I started to actually feel my spirit leave my body. They say drowning's a way to go, and I certainly don't want to ever do that. That's happened to me twice. I struggle to go. My past, they say, flashes before you, and certainly mine did. But because my mother and my grandmother just went to a prayer meeting to pray for me, I believe God was sovereign and heard their prayer. And I was ready to let go of my life, and I tried one more time, and it was like a staircase of rocks that went up on top of the pier. I struggled to get back to shore. My buddy, he thought he was going to watch me drown. He couldn't see me, of course. I'm under that much water. He came back. How he got back, I got to shore, and I said, "Man, guys, I'm done doing all this wild stuff." Well, that's in the spring. Smelting's in April, May, maybe. That didn't last very long. I was right back to my wild ways until August of that very year. It was a bad storm. I'd got home probably drunk in the middle of the night, 5 o'clock in the morning. My mom and dad were out in the barn, or I think they were yet, milking cows. It was a bad storm, and my mother taught me that there was going to be an end of the world, and Jesus was going to come back. And I thought, if this is the night that he comes back, I'm going to go to hell. I got out of my bed, got on my knees, and I said, "Lord, I don't know how real you are. If you are, I need your help, and I'm going to give my life to you." The things began to flood out of me, the darkness, and I'm not perfect, of course, but the main things, the cursing, I swear every other word, they were gone. The desire to smoke was gone. The desire to drink was gone. I was basically engaged to be married to this girl. I wasn't faithful. I was just a mess, and that stuff fell off of me. And I had like a Paul in the Bible's conversion. It was immediate, and it was amazing. I remember going to the bar and telling my mother I became a Christian, and that was one of the happiest women you'll ever see.
Did she believe you that?
They had to believe me because I had such a radical change in my life. I remember my best friend, we had a beer party scheduled for that very weekend. I called him over and I said, "I got something to tell you." I can still see him sitting on the back of my Ford on the trunk, and I said, "I got something to tell you." And I told him what happened to me, and he said, "That'll never last." That was 50-some years ago, and still lasted. And so I went to the party. I went into the bar, and it was like the Lord said, "I'm going to wait out here." He didn't go in with me. And because I wouldn't drink, those guys mocked me and drugged me outside and forced alcohol down me because I wouldn't drink. And I knew then that's not the place I ever wanted to be again, unless I was sharing the Lord with somebody, which I did street ministry and some of that. But so I had an amazing conversion. So it's lasted all these years, and hopefully it gets better every year.
I think that if anybody knows you, they may or may not actually know that story or kind of conversion and just like growing up being, like you said, rough kid, really rebellious. So definitely a redemption story, to be sure.
It is a redemption story, to be sure. God redeemed me, not just for me, so that I could share the Lord with others, just like you do, and help redeem them.
Which you've done business then most of your life. So you said you went to school for welding and vocational stuff, but that's not where you stayed work-wise.
No, I never welded again. I started working in a milk reload in Chautauqua, Wisconsin. My dad was a member of NFO, which is a National Farm Organization. I got a job there. reloading milk tankers. I was young. I was 19. So I worked there, and then later, within the next year or so, I met my wife. And so we got married. I was 20, she was 19. Moved to Chautauqua where I worked, rented a little bitty house in Chautauqua. And so as I worked at the reload, then later I got to be a milk inspector. I inspected farms. I was a field man, they call them. Tested milk at the reload. So that's what I did. The interesting story about my business, which is selling antiques. In this house that my wife and I rented, $85 a month, it's a little house with a garage. This man and his wife was from Chicago. He was very elderly even then. All of his parents' stuff was in the attic.
Okay.
Even their wedding outfit. And I mean, so this goes back maybe 140 years of stuff. Well, my wife and I never went up there in the attic, never bothered it. We might go up there and look, but we never messed with anything. The garage was full of antiques, and we were good renters. I rented there maybe, I don't know, it was a year or two. And I finally wanted to move up here, and I got to be able to transfer it up here. And so I called the man from Chicago, and I said, I'm moving. And in the meantime, he had lost his wife. He said, I don't know what I'm going to do with all that stuff. I said, I don't know, but I'm moving. My father said, why don't you offer to buy all of it? So I called him. I said, would you be willing to sell me everything here? Well, of course, he was elated. He didn't have to come up and bother with anything. So we had my mom put on his mother's wedding outfit, which would have been well over 100 years old, stood out in my yard, and we had a yard sale. People came, and that, man, they're crazy. They're fighting over. I was selling stuff that's probably worth $100 for $1. I didn't know. But I had kept a couple of things out of the attic that I liked. I appreciated the old things. And so as it goes, I'm on the road inspecting farms, and my neighbor said, hey, if you ever find an old dresser, I need an old dresser. Well, a few days later, I see an old dresser in a garage. I asked the guy if he wants to sell it. He sells it to me, and his neighbor said, hey, I need a cupboard. And pretty soon I find a cupboard, and I thought, man, this is kind of fun. And I loved old stuff. I was intrigued with it. So I began to look for other people for other things. And my buddy said, why don't you start a store? Well, I started my shop in 1976 in a little bitty part of my garage I just built. And so I worked full time yet, put a sign out on the highway, and I wasn't even there. My wife would sell us stuff, and there we go. So that started my shop, little bitty garage. I continued to work at the reload and then sell antiques on the side. My boss hated that I did that. He did not understand. And so my buddy finally said, hey, you need to do this full time. And I said, I just don't think I can do that. And back then, my wife, as the years go by, we have 4 children. We get the old creamery in Spooner Creamery, where the motel is now. What is it, Northwestern or yeah? Okay. The big motel.
Yep.
That was an old creamery. It was vacant because it went broke, and so I rented a part of the old cooler where my wife was. 4 little kids, no running water. She had to take them little kids up to the gas station when I had to go to the bathroom. And I continued to work. I would go there in the morning, start a fire, wood fire. It was pretty rugged. A lot of friends said, you need to leave him. You shouldn't have to do this. But she's a great partner, and she did it to serve us. So then we were there a couple of years in that creamery, and my boss did not like me, and we had a little conflict, and he let me go. But what's surprising, right before he let me go, I bought the house in Spooner, the antique house, which happens to be a Sears and Roebuck's house that was later became a coffee shop when I sold it. But so we went there. I just bought that home for a store, and then I lost my job. And I thought, how am I ever going to make it? The Lord knows is one of the best things, not the best thing, of course, that ever happened to me, but God arranged it. And that's, from there on, it's 100 miles an hour.
I don't even think I knew the story about how you started in antiques.
That's how I started.
That's so crazy.
Yeah. And so we went from a little bitty garage to now 5 buildings full, hundreds of thousands of items. It's a pretty big deal, which you're there.
Yeah, I'm there. I obviously got the privilege of growing up with you as my grandpa. And you, as long as I've known you, have been such a faith-filled person who can very boldly go to battle in prayer and pray for people. And that piece of, but if not, I think is something that a lot of people struggle with. So could you speak to that a little bit? How do you pray for miracles and then sometimes it doesn't appear like the miracle happened?
It's after God spoke to me that it's his job to answer the prayer where he chooses. When I pray in faith, I release that to God. I pray for healing. I pray for people of all kinds of different problems and marriages. I leave it with God, and that has to happen. Because if you carry it yourself, what happens, doubt can enter you. And doubt is not of God, and neither is fear. And so we've been through some amazing things. My wife's had cancer in her tongue several times. You pray. Really, you're helpless. You pray. You have faith, and leave with God. And then let the results be God's. And most people have a hard time. You hear it all the time. God didn't answer my prayer. Oh, maybe God did answer your prayer. He probably did, and he certainly did in one way or another. Maybe not the way you wanted or thought was best for you. But it's key when we pray in faith that it's not on me. People said, well, they didn't get healed. You didn't have enough faith. I do not believe that. Mm-hmm. Because if that's true, then it's on me. And I am only the one that prays. I'm not the one that gives the answer. And if you can come to that, I think it's huge. And I think many people walk away from God because they prayed, had faith. They thought they had all kinds of faith, and it didn't happen, so they gave up. It's not on us. Our job is to pray, to believe, have faith. We all have different measures of faith, the Bible says. But to pray, believe, leave it to God. Mm-hmm. He's a big God, mm-hmm. and he is a loving God and merciful God, and he will answer the way he chooses, not the way I choose.
Yeah. And I've seen that, again, I am your granddaughter, so I've gotten a front row seat to watching our family grow. And as a father, now grandfather, and even great-grandfather, mm-hmm. how has that played into those roles?
Well, when you have children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, of course you want the best for them. I have told most of my grandchildren, what do you remember when I die about me? And I want them to answer this. I want them to say, he was a man of faith. He was a man of God. And that is the legacy as a Christian that we need to leave. Not that I have a fabulous antique shop. I have fabulous God. I have fabulous children. I have fabulous grandchildren and great-grandchildren. And I pray every night, almost every night. Rarely do I miss. I pray through every one of my children, every one of my grandchildren, and now great-grandchildren. I usually, once in a while, if I'm extremely tired, I try to cover them all. Say, God, you know them all. But most of the time, I try to go through every one of them. Sons, daughter, grandchildren. So, yeah.
Yeah, I've been on the receiving end of some of those prayers.
Every night?
Yes, but particularly during own hard seasons in my life. Been in tears with you guys. both Grandma and you asking for prayer and help and wisdom. And so I've got to watch and witness and experience what it feels like to have people believe for you like that. Kind of like you were saying, when you can't believe for yourself, when you can't hope for yourself, and circumstances that didn't go the way that I, was praying for necessarily. So I've just been on such the receiving end of the power and impact of that, of being people who love each other like that.
I think the description in the Bible fits it well. It says, don't let your hands fall down in tiredness. Basically, I think it was Moses or somebody lifted his hands up.
To win the war.
Yeah.
Yep.
He was tired.
Mm-hmm.
He needed other people around him to support him.
Mm-hmm.
And we can look at the Bible in every circumstance that we go through. He needed help from another person.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we can't. I used to think when I got saved, if I was the only one in the whole world, I'd serve the Lord. I had a cocky attitude. I was on fire for God, and I would have witnessed to the devil. But I found out later as I get older that the church has become so much more important to me because we need each other. Not just family, brothers and sisters in Christ, the lost. We need each other. We were built. God created us not to be alone in our help and in our strife, in our desire to love God and follow Him.
Mm-hmm. Now, you are a fairly passionate person.
Fairly.
And fairly opinionated.
A little.
And you're not afraid to argue.
Mm-hmm.
So these are character traits, that I was raised with, good or bad as they may be. I know you're passionate for people. I know you're passionate for loving on people, but at times there's been tension. At times there's been rubbing in ways that maybe didn't honor the Lord. Could you speak to that a little bit?
Well, when I first got saved, as I told you, I was passionate about God. And as I learned later in life that God had given me an unusual gift of boldness. I expected everybody to be as bold as me, and they're not. Mm-hmm. And that's not bad. And my boldness, as you said, got me into some trouble or hurt feelings or wounded people, and still can and does. As we get older, we should learn, and we're becoming sanctified daily. That means we're not perfect. I'm not perfect. But because I am so opinionated, which I am, I'm very, very bold in my store, sharing the Lord. Today, I called the guy a liberal, and he was.
Helpful.
Yeah. But he was a great guy, and we had a great conversation. And so learning how to be tactful, I'm not very tactful.
I wouldn't say it's your strength.
I wouldn't say it's my strength either. It still isn't my strength. And I just shared this last week at church with a guy. I said, I feel like I got a big bullseye on my back because I'm very bold. I have a business. I'm very verbal. So it takes a lot of effort and energy to walk with the Lord and walk with people without causing dissension. Mm-hmm. And so I don't do that perfectly, that's for sure. And when I read the Bible, one of the words that jumps out at me every time I underlined it, it says, be gentle. Mm. I wrote right along the word, God help me. I'm not a gentle person. I can be very gentle, but I think I'm much more gentle now than I was years ago. Mm. And I still have to work on it. I have to apologize a lot of times. Mm-hmm. I have to ask for forgiveness. And but if anybody wants to know how I feel, believe me,
you'll definitely get the answer.
You don't have to ask me twice.
Sometimes you don't even have to ask.
That's right.
Just go ahead and tell us anyways.
Most people will know what I stand for.
Mm-hmm.
If they don't know, I'll tell them.
Yeah. No, in all honesty, I think growing up, it was something that I definitely would say I learned from you was at least being strong in my convictions. And again, I think I had to learn how to do that gracefully, and hopefully I've learned some of that, and I'm still learning some of that, and how to stand in love. So I'm not sure I always learned the way to stand, but I definitely learned to be a person who stands and to know your convictions and who you are. Growing up, and even now, you're not confused about who you are.
Not at all.
And you're very unapologetic about the mismatched camo and the white van that you drive. And
I'm not embarrassed. One time a pastor said, "You drive that junk?" That's a pretty poor testimony. I said, "I love this pastor. If he's listening, he'll know who he is." I said, "Well, it's paid for. Doesn't bother me a bit. I'm not out to impress many people. Not with my vehicles, for sure."
True facts.
So, or how I dress, I'm confident in who I am.
No, see, but I think that's something that a lot of people struggle with. Even people who might be fairly confident people, I think it's really hard for people to just unapologetically be like, well, this is who I am, and I'm not trying to impress you with it. So what would your advice be to somebody who's wanting to do that better?
Well, there's a difference between confident and being arrogant about what you stand for, how you dress, or what you drive. Pride is a bad thing. And I could have pride driving a wonderful vehicle or driving a piece of junk. So my advice is that we really need to be with God, and so that He can help us deal with people. People are starving spiritually. I meet them all the time. I meet very wealthy people that are starving to hear that God loves them, and their own insecurity. I can tell pretty fastly. I get to know a lot of my customers. I had one guy say, "Why am I telling you all this?" I said, "Well, first of all, if I don't know you, I'm a good listener."
I must be following in your footsteps, because I have people that tell me that all the time.
Do you? Yeah.
Oh, they sit down all the time at the bar, and they go, "I don't really know why I just said any of that."
People need others to hear, because they live in a fast-paced world where people say, "How you doing?" "Great." "You're not doing great. Life right then sucks." And hey, when somebody starts pouring their heart out, if you just listen, they need that, and gives you an opportunity to share with them the love of God. And I think back that so many times I didn't do it right, but when I got saved, I determined that I would witness to everybody that I worked with. And if you have time, I want to tell you a quick story. I was so verbal about my Christianity as a young Christian. I remember working in this milk reload. They hired this guy. And this guy is amazing. I'm always witnessing to him. He says, "You don't have any fun. You don't smoke or drink or do all this stuff." And I just keep sharing the Lord with him. As I get to know him, the guy is absolutely brilliant. And I said, "You cocky." I said, he said, "Well, ask me a word in a dictionary." Now, this guy is working at the lowest grade level of work you could work at. Minimum wage. I asked him any question in a dictionary. This is hard to believe. He knew every word. So one day, I thought I was a real stutter.
Did you ask really hard words, or just like,
hard words I never heard of? Like,
so you use the dictionary.
I use the dictionary. I would open it up and get a word like, "He will not know this," and he did.
Okay.
Now, no, these are not simple words. So not only was he brilliant, I thought I played softball back then. That's really good, I thought. Little pride there. I could throw a ball hard. While we worked in a railroad, there was a water tower, was 110 feet up. So we're walking out in the yard, and I said, "I'll show you how to throw an ice ball." I threw that about halfway up there. I still remember he took a snowball and he hit the water tower 110 feet up. To this day, I'm going to finish this story. It's an extraordinary story. So I said, why are you working here? He said, I want to work at the lowest level I can because someday I'll be famous and I'll know what it's like to work at a low-level job. I said, well, that's a cock-a-doodle-doo. He leaves. I don't see him for years. I get a letter in the mail a few years later to Richard, who knows what Christmas is all about, and he underlines Christ. And he got to know the Lord. One day I'm watching the news. He's a newscaster. He became famous. He did to this day, I'm not sure he wasn't an angel. How could somebody be that brilliant and that physically strong? It's an amazing story to me. And if I hadn't saw it and lived there, I would not even believe the story.
Here at Redemption, we know that fathers are game changers. We've felt firsthand the impact that the unwavering, unyielding, unstoppable support of a father can have. And we also know that we can't thank them enough. So in honor of our fathers, the fathers in our community, and all of the dads that deserve a little extra recognition this year, we're offering the discount code Father's Day 20 through June 16th, 2024 for 20% off your coffee bean purchase. So if you've decided that fresh, locally roasted coffee would be the perfect gift to support his early mornings and long days, head over to our website and place your order at redemptioncoffeehouseandroastery.com.
So I was raised with you as a grandpa, so I got to experience what having you as a grandpa was like. But one of those defining moments for me, and I've shared this before, is you were actually the one to help encourage me to start Redemption. When I was at the shop crying, like, I'm going to be graduating. I don't want to do anything in marketing. All I want to do is this coffee shop. You were the one who kind of was a catalyst for me starting that. Could you talk to that a little bit? What was it like having your granddaughter pursue entrepreneurship?
Well, I remember the day clearly when you came crying and said, Grandpa, I've worked for other coffee shops. It's just, I want my own coffee shop. And I said, well, that's great. I'm going to give you 5 things to do. And when you get those 5 things done, you can come to talk to me, which I thought would take you a year or more. 2 weeks later, you walk in the store and said, Grandpa, I did all 5. I was shocked. And I thought, this girl's got some hustle. I think I had faith in that you could do this. So I said, however I can help, I'll help. And I said, the next thing you got to do is find a coffee shop or something that would facilitate your dream. He said, okay, I'm after it. You found this box in New York on an island. And I remember you driving all the way out there and calling me, and it was raining. It was raining there when you were looking at it. Mm-hmm. She says, Grandpa, I believe this is what I should buy. I said, well, let's do it. So in that process, a lot of things didn't go quite the way you had figured they would go, or me. But I think God worked the wrinkles out for the best for you, you know. You're an entrepreneur. I told you one of the things to do, you're a woman, that I felt you could get grants. You're just starting, probably could get a new business loan, blah, blah, blah. You know the story about all that, how it went down. Mm-hmm. And I remember clearly the day that black box I call it black box, got delivered to our store, and there's a big crane there, and watching you so thrilled, and I was confident that you could make it happen, and I'm very proud of you. You've done well.
Thank you.
Yeah. So we have people come to the store from all over the country, have your coffee, and say it's the best coffee they've had. So that makes Grandpa proud.
You didn't quite get how someone would come spend $5 on a coffee, but
Grandpa is a little different.
Has there been any parts of watching that journey where you've been nervous?
Nervous? Not. It's almost 3 years now. It'll be 3 years next week, actually.
In 2 weeks, I think.
2 weeks. Mm-hmm. Watching what really, I would come to work on a Friday morning. What made me nervous, you had these special drinks you called some weird name. Flights. Why they're flights? They're not flying away. I don't know. I thought, you could never sell one of them for that much money. And there every Friday I get there and there's 30 cars parked. I can't even park in my own business because everybody's there having a flight. Beyond me. But watching you do that, I know antiques, you know coffee. So I've learned to trust you in what you're doing there. Although you come up with some wild ideas about other things on my property, sometimes I believe you own it and I don't.
Maybe someday.
Because you're very aggressive and you're an entrepreneur. You make things happen. So sometimes not the way I want them to happen, but you've done well, honey. And who couldn't be proud of a daughter, granddaughter, or daughter, or anybody that has that initiative? And it's not always easy. There's times when it's a lot of stress. It's heartbreaking and things don't go the way you want. But that's part of life. Every day isn't perfect, nor is it meant to be. If it was, we'd never create faith in us. So, yeah.
We end Beyond the Bar with 2 questions. Did you just check to see that was our name?
I can't understand why it's behind the bar.
Beyond the Bar?
I think it's always like, bar, that's like an alcohol place. This is coffee.
I called that the place where people sit, the bar.
Yeah, I understand now.
Oh, okay.
I've asked several people.
Other people had to explain it to you?
Yeah.
That's funny. Yep. And we're bringing the conversations we have there beyond the bar. See?
Okay. All right. Now I get it.
Right.
So, real clear to me.
In case anybody else was confused. Well, we end every episode of Beyond the Bar with 2 questions. So they're questions that I want to know. So, number 1, if you could go back and tell your younger self one thing, what would it be? And number 2, what's one thing you want to be remembered for?
The number 1 question was what I would what?
If you could go back and tell your younger self one thing, what would it be?
I'd say go for it.
Okay.
And I went for it. I did what I love to do. I love people. I love junk. Old junk. God put me, I'm going to be a welder. I never welded again. I had no dream that I would own my own business. I was like the dumbest guy in class. And that's what's good about God. He puts us in places we can't dream of. So I really have no regrets. I have almost none. It's amazing. Most people could write a list of their regrets. I don't have any. Is that bad?
Do you regret the bad parts? The parts where you messed up?
They're training. Did Job regret being thrown over and swallowed by a whale? It was training.
That wasn't Job.
I'm sorry, Jonah. I know better. I was a pastor. Jonah, yeah. Paul was beaten and persecuted and whipped and thrown over and boat wrecked. Did he regret it? I don't think so. It was a process of life that God trained him in. Sometimes they're very hard, but I don't regret much.
So your advice for everybody is go for it.
If you have a dream, go for your dream. Reach high. Don't set your level too low because you'll never reach what you could have. Personally, I'd say take God along.
Yeah. Well, you saying go for it is the reason I'm doing my thing. So.
Hey, good.
So, second question, what is one thing you want to be remembered for?
The one thing I want to be remembered for, that I was a man that walked with God, loved God, and trusted God. Was man with God. Nothing without him.
Pretty good thing.
Amen.
Well, thank you for being a guest on the podcast. Hopefully you had fun.
Oh, it was a riot.
This is your first podcasting experience, I think.
No, I was on radio. I used to do radio for Christian radio station in Salt Lake.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, so you're like totally a pro.
Oh, nothing.
Okay. Well, thanks for being on here. Glad this was nothing. Super easy. It was a great conversation. It was an honor to sit down with you.
Honored to be your grandfather.
Well, thanks. And if you hadn't said go for it to me, redemption wouldn't exist. So,
yeah. Well, thank God it did.
Thank God it did.
All right.
Well, thank you everybody for being here. It was so good. I hope you were as blessed by this episode as I was, and we will see you next time.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode of Beyond the Bar. Make sure you hit subscribe so that you never miss a conversation. And to check out more of what Redemption has to offer, and to join our email community, head over to our website at redemptioncoffeehouseandroastery.com.